bit of background about role modeling. So role modeling is always going to be easier when you're feeling good about yourself. So again, we come back to that foundation of why we spent so much time building that self-esteem, because when you feel good about yourself, it's much easier to be a good role model. So this is probably key thing. So now you've already laid down that foundation, it's going to be a lot easier to be a good role model. Now, why is it important to be a good role model? Because from the moment that your child is born, your child is observing your behavior. So even before that your child can speak, your child is observing what you're doing, copying your reactions, observing how you speak, observing how you get upset about things, observing when you laugh, when you cry. How do you respond to particular situations? And then obviously when they can talk, your children are then able to model your behavior, model your reactions to things. The way you get stressed and angry and anxious, they will role model all that. So if you are trying to parent calmly with confidence, and you're just telling your child all the time, do this, do this, do this, but your behavior is not consistent with what you're telling your child to do. And it's this inadvertent behavior that we're not paying attention to, our reactions to stress, when we get anxious, when we get angry, when we get sad. If we're not observing our own behavior and monitoring and adjusting our own behavior to how we want our child to be, it's extremely difficult to get them to do that. So in the first 7 years of life, that's when most of the imprinting occurs. So that's why role modeling is critical at that early stage. So this is really important to go, okay, well, I'm going to be committed to being the best version of myself, looking after my needs, in order to then be able to be a good role model to my child. So number one, I have to be committed to myself, to making sure that my needs are being met, and making sure that I'm modeling behavior that I want my child to do as a result of me doing this behavior. So that's really important, critical to think about that in that sense. So why am I caring about my own needs? Because my child is observing this, particularly in that first 7 years of life. The next thing to think about is then, right, well, if in the first 7 years of life there was all this imprinting happening in my child's life, then the same thing has happened to me. So what's happened to you in your life in that first 7 years, the things that you observed, the reactions that you saw around you, will impact the way that you behave as an adult. And that's why you might catch yourself acting in a way that you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm just like my mother, or I'm just like my father, or I'm just like whoever was the primary carer. And it makes sense because you're imprinting and copying that behavior. So as an adult, we need to be aware of some of that imprinting that might have happened, and then to go, okay, well, what can I now adjust? As an adult, I'm going to be conscious of this behavior and I'm going to adjust that behavior. So for example, if you have a parent with high level of insecurity, there's a high chance that you also have a high level of insecurity. So we need to address that and say, okay, well, going back to, for example, that technique we talked about earlier, looking at some of the negative experiences in your life, maybe you can remember an event that you observed or something in your life that helped to unfortunately secure that sense of insecurity. You can go back and use that technique to reframe the way that you observe that and how you learned from that experience. And then once you do that, going back and changing, or at least thinking and being conscious of your reactions and adjusting, will help you then to not allow that past to influence your current situation. So then the next thing we need to do is we need to go, okay, well, I'm going to commit to that. I'm going to commit to being the best role model that I can be in order to help my child to be the best person that my child can be. So again, this is not about being paranoid and feeling like you've got to be a perfect person. That's not the point here. The point here is to go, well, it doesn't help me to have these extreme anxious reactions or to be feeling insecure. So these negative feelings that I'm experiencing, negative reactions that I observe in myself, I don't want to repeat these patterns in my child. So just being observing of your own behavior, of your own reactions to things, and how you could improve these things in order for you then to be a good role model for your child. So those three things are really important. And if you do those things, it will help you so much in your parenting, because you won't have to keep pushing against the grain. You won't have to keep trying to push your child to be a particular way when they're observing something completely different.